I packed my suitcase that cold November morning. My hands were shaking as I folded each piece of clothing, each memory, each broken promise into those pieces of fabric. After 68 years on this earth, I was leaving everything behind. I sold the house. I vanished without telling a single soul. I changed cities. I changed my entire life. I changed absolutely everything. And now, as I look out the window of this small apartment that belongs only to me, where nobody yells, where nobody uses me, where nobody schemes to take what little I have left, I'm finally ready to tell you why I did it. Why did a mother have to run away from her own son like she was escaping a dangerous predator? Because that's exactly what Marcus became to me. A predator. And his wife, Olivia, along with that entire family of vipers she brought into my world, became the perfect accomplices to my complete destruction. But I didn't let myself be destroyed. I made a choice that some would call cruel, others would call extreme. Honestly, I don't care what anyone calls it anymore. For me, it was the only way to survive. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I genuinely want to know where you are right now. Are you alone? Are you feeling trapped like I was? Because there's something powerful about sharing pain across distance, across continents even. If you stick with me until the very end of this story, you're going to understand why I don't regret a single thing. You'll understand why every single document I signed, every box I packed, every tear I shed in complete silence while planning my escape, it was all worth it. Every ounce of it. Because there are moments in life when you have to choose between remaining the victim or becoming your own savior. And I chose to save myself. I chose myself for the first time in decades. I know what it feels like to be alone at this stage of life. I know what it is to wake up every morning wondering if anyone actually cares about you or if you're just a resource they can exploit until you're of no use anymore. For so many years, I swallowed that reality. I convinced myself it was normal, that this is just how modern families work, that maybe I was being dramatic. But there was this voice inside me, getting louder and louder, refusing to be ignored. It kept telling me no, that this wasn't right, that nobody deserves to be treated the way I was being treated. And that voice was absolutely right. How many of you are listening right now feeling like nobody truly sees you? Drop a comment below. Don't stay silent. It all started 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those gray days where time seems to move slower than it should. Marcus and Olivia had been acting strange, distant, secretive. Whispered phone calls that would stop the moment I walked in. Doors closing. Complicit glances exchanged between them that I wasn't supposed to understand. I tried not to overthink it. After all, they'd been married for 5 years, and I figured they deserved their privacy. But Olivia never liked me. I knew that from the very first moment we met. The way she looked at me, as if I were something old and broken that needed to be replaced, something completely obsolete, taking up too much space in her world. Yet Marcus seemed happy with her, and honestly, that was all that mattered to me back then. How foolish I was. How blind. How utterly naive to believe that a mother's love could be enough to keep her son close when there was a woman poisoning his mind every single day. That Tuesday, Marcus walked into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner. I knew exactly what was coming. He had that expression I'd learned to recognize, that mixture of anticipated guilt and deep discomfort. That look always came before a request. "Mom, I need to borrow some cash. Mom, we're going to stay here a few more months until we find our own place. Mom, Olivia's feeling stressed. Try not to bother her. Mom. Mom. Mom." Always Mom when he needed something. But never Mom when it came to including me in his plans, his joys, his real life. He'd completely forgotten how to use my name, like I was just a service, a function he could call upon. I turned toward him with that automatic smile. You know, the one, that motherly smile that's supposed to endure everything, forgive everything, never say no. Marcus, honey, what's wrong? And he, without even looking me directly in the eye, dropped the bomb like he was just commenting on the weather. Mom, I need the credit cards. All 3 of them. Olivia and I have to make some important purchases this week. I'll give them back to you next Monday. Something inside me went tight. My stomach twisted. He had never, ever asked for all 3 cards at the same time. 1. Sure. Maybe 2 in an emergency. Possibly. But all 3. What do you need all 3 for, Marcus? My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. He shrugged with this indifference that absolutely broke my heart into pieces. I told you. Important purchases. Don't worry, Mom. Trust me. Trust me. Those 3 words echoed in my head for days afterward. Trust me, said the son I had raised alone after his father died when he was just 8 years old. Trust me, said the man for whom I worked double shifts to pay for his entire college tuition. Trust me, said the one who was living in my house for free while saving for a future that apparently didn't include me anymore. But I wanted to believe. I needed to believe so desperately. So I took those 3 credit cards out of my wallet with trembling fingers and handed them to him. Marcus took them without even saying thank you. He just nodded, mumbled something quick about catching me later, and left the kitchen. I heard him say something to Olivia in the hallway, his voice low and conspiratorial. And then I heard her laugh. A laugh that sounded like pure victory, like triumph, like she'd won something precious. And right then, in that exact moment, I knew. I knew deep in my bones that I had just made a terrible, terrible mistake. But I still didn't know how terrible it was going to become. What he did with those cards changed everything about my life forever. But wait until you hear what happened next. Stay tuned for part 2, because the betrayal you think is coming. It's so much worse than that. And I finally fought back. The next 3 days were absolutely strange, unsettling in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on. Marcus and Olivia practically disappeared from the house. They'd leave early in the morning before I even had my coffee and come back late, after I'd already resigned myself to another lonely evening. When I asked where they'd been, the answers were always vague, always evasive. Running errands, taking care of some stuff, Mom. Don't worry. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Those words became a refrain, repeated so often that they started to feel like a warning instead of reassurance. I tried to check the credit card activity online, desperate to understand what was happening, what they were spending so much money on. But every single time I logged in, the system would glitch. Error. Try again later. The website mocked me, refused to give up its secrets. So I called the bank, my heart pounding in my chest. Everything is perfectly fine with your account, ma'am, the representative assured me. All your cards are functioning normally. But something didn't feel right. Something was happening in the shadows, and I wasn't seeing it. I could feel it though, that creeping sense of wrongness that makes your skin crawl. On Friday night, Marcus came into my room. He was acting nervous, jumpy. Mom, Olivia and I are going out of town for the weekend. Actually, we might stay until Wednesday. Some friends invited us to their cabin upstate. I really need a break from work. It seemed odd. Marcus never took spontaneous vacations. He was always so careful with his time, so calculated about every move. But I just nodded, trying to sound supportive despite the alarm bells screaming in my head. It's okay, honey. Have fun. You deserve it. He left my room without a hug, without one of those kisses on my forehead that he used to give me when he was a little boy. He just left. And I sat there on my bed in the darkness, staring at the walls of that room where I had cried so many nights after his father died, wondering exactly when I had lost my son. At what specific moment had that sweet boy who used to hold my hand and tell me I was his favorite person in the entire world turned into this cold, distant stranger who barely looked at me anymore? Have you ever had someone close to you change like this? So gradually you almost didn't notice until one day they were a complete stranger. Comment your story. Saturday morning arrived with a suffocating silence. That kind of silence that makes you feel uncomfortable in your own home, unwelcome in a place you've owned for decades. Marcus and Olivia were already gone. No note. No message about when they'd be back. Nothing. Just that heavy, crushing emptiness that seemed to fill every corner of the house, seeping into my bones. I made myself some coffee with hands that weren't quite steady and sat in the living room trying to shake off this feeling of uneasiness that had wrapped itself around my chest and wouldn't let me breathe properly. I turned on the television to distract myself, but I couldn't focus on anything. My eyes kept drifting toward the door of Marcus and Olivia's room, my old sewing room, the space I had given up when they got married because they needed their privacy. That room had been my sanctuary for 20 years. I had sewn countless wedding dresses, baby clothes, quilts full of love and intention in that space. But when Marcus asked if they could have it, I didn't hesitate. I gave it up without a second thought because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice. We shrink ourselves. We disappear. Saturday became Sunday, and Sunday became Monday, and still something felt terribly wrong. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just kept wandering through the house like a ghost, checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if Marcus had texted me, if he'd even thought of me while he was away having the time of his life. On Monday evening, my phone rang. It was my sister, Caroline, calling from Colorado where she'd moved 3 years ago after her second marriage. We'd been distant, our calls sporadic at best, but she was still family. And family has a way of knowing when something's wrong. Mom called me, she said without even saying hello first. She's worried about you. She said Marcus mentioned something about needing money for renovations. My blood ran cold. Renovations? Yeah, he said they wanted to make some updates to the house. Mom said he asked her for $5,000 last week. I felt the room spin around me. Renovations? We'd never discussed renovations. He'd never said a single word to me about updating anything in the house. And he'd gone to his grandmother for money too. Caroline, he asked me for my credit cards. All 3 of them. He said it was for important purchases. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her mind working through the possibilities, none of them good. Mom, she said quietly, and hearing my own daughter use that concerned tone made my heart break a little bit more, I think you need to find out what he's really doing. After we hung up, I did something I'm not entirely proud of. I went into their room. I didn't have permission, and Marcus would have been furious if he'd known, but I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening in my own house. I opened his desk drawer and found receipts. Stacks of them. From electronics stores, from furniture places, from expensive restaurants I'd never even heard of. The totals made my stomach drop. Thousands and thousands of dollars. My eyes started burning with tears, hot, angry tears that I hadn't let myself cry in years. These weren't sad tears. They were the tears of someone who was finally understanding the magnitude of the betrayal. I sank down onto their bed and just broke. How could he? How could my own son do this to me? After everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given up, how could he steal from me? But here's the thing, as I sat there reading those receipts, my tears turned to something else. They turned into anger. They turned into clarity. And I made a decision that would change everything. In part 3, you'll hear about the moment I stopped being the victim and started fighting back. Don't look away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every possibility, every scenario. The receipts had shown furniture purchases that weren't in this house. Electronics that we didn't own. Restaurant bills for 2 people at places I'd never been invited to. They were using my credit cards to build a life I wasn't part of, a life they didn't want me in. When Marcus and Olivia returned Wednesday evening, something fundamental had shifted inside me. I wasn't the same woman who had handed over those cards 5 days ago. I was someone new. Someone who was finally starting to understand her own worth. How was the cabin? I asked, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. Great, Mom, Marcus said, avoiding my eyes like he always did now. Really needed that. I nodded slowly. I'm sure you did. He didn't understand the weight behind those words. He didn't know that I had discovered the truth, that I knew exactly what he'd done. But that night, after they'd gone to bed, I started making phone calls. To the bank. To a lawyer. To my accountant. The legal system moved slowly, but I was patient. I had nothing but time, and I finally had something more powerful than patience. I had the truth. The credit card company confirmed my suspicions. Unauthorized purchases made at merchants that had nothing to do with household expenses. Marcus had been using my cards for his personal benefit, his personal life, his personal plans that had absolutely nothing to do with me or my home. It was fraud, plain and simple. A federal crime committed by my own son. Do you know how that feels? To realize that someone you gave everything to has systematically stolen from you. You're not crazy if you're angry. Share your thoughts below. The lawyer I hired, a sharp woman named Patricia who didn't mince words, laid it all out for me. We can press charges, she said, her pen tapping against her desk. We can pursue this legally. But I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared for what comes after? What comes after? I hadn't thought about those 2 words. I hadn't let myself imagine a life where my son was in legal trouble because of something I'd done. But then I thought about those receipts again. I thought about the deliberate deception, the conspiratorial whispers with Olivia, the way he'd looked me in the eye and asked me to trust him while he was betraying me. Yes, I said finally. I'm prepared. Marcus didn't see it coming. None of them did. When the police showed up at our house on a Thursday morning, Marcus's face went white. Olivia started screaming about injustice. His family called me names I won't repeat, accused me of being ungrateful, of ruining their lives, of being cruel and vindictive and heartless. But I just sat at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness, peace hasn't fully arrived yet, and maybe it never will completely. But peace comes in these quiet moments when you finally stop doubting yourself, when you finally trust what you saw with your own eyes and felt in your own heart. The worst part came during the week he was out on bail. Marcus came to me with tears in his eyes, begging me to drop the charges. Olivia stood beside him, looking at me with pure hatred. He claimed he'd done it because they were struggling financially, because I had so much and they had so little, because the system was unfair and he was just trying to get ahead. I listened to every word. I let him finish. And then I said something that I had been rehearsing in my head since the moment I made my first phone call to the authorities. You had a choice, Marcus. You could have come to me and said, Mom, we're struggling. Can you help us? And you know what I would have done? I would have helped you. I would have found a way, even if it meant less for me. But instead, you chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose to look me in the eye and ask me to trust you while you were breaking that trust into 1,000 pieces. He tried to interrupt me, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. I've spent my entire life being what everyone else needed me to be. Your father needed me to be strong when he was sick. You needed me to be selfless. Your sister needed me to be available whenever she called. Jessica, your wife's mother, she needed me to validate her cruelty toward you because I was too afraid to speak up. Everyone needed something from me. And I gave it all. But do you know what I never asked for? I never asked for love. I never asked for respect. I never asked for honesty. Maybe if I had demanded those things earlier, we wouldn't be here right now. He left the room crying. I don't know if he was crying because he felt remorse or because his plan had failed and the consequences were finally real. Maybe it was both. But I realized something in that moment that changed my life forever. I couldn't save him. I had spent so many years trying to save him, to fix him, to make him into the person I thought he should be. But nobody can save anybody else. We can only save ourselves. The trial is coming in part 4, and you won't believe what happened in that courtroom. The judge heard things that would make your blood boil. And Marcus's family tried something so desperate, so shocking, that I almost didn't survive it. Keep watching. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Colder. Harder. There's no mercy in those walls, no room for the complicated feelings that come with prosecuting your own child. I wore a blue dress, my power dress, Patricia called it, and I sat straight in my chair and told the truth. He asked for the cards, I said to the prosecutor, my voice not wavering even though my hands were shaking. I handed them to him willingly, trusting that he would use them responsibly. I trusted my son. The prosecuting attorney had warned me that Marcus's lawyer would try to paint me as a villain. They would say I was a bitter, controlling mother who was destroying her son's life out of spite. They would claim I had given him the cards and now I was pretending otherwise. They would turn everything inside out and twist it until the truth looked like a lie. And they did. Isn't it true, Marcus's lawyer asked during cross-examination, that you have a history of controlling your son's finances? No, I said firmly. I have a history of supporting my son. Didn't you refuse to help him with his mortgage? I helped him more than my own retirement could afford, I replied. And he knew that I was struggling. I asked him once if I could move into a smaller bedroom, into the apartment above the garage where he and Olivia are now, and he told me it would hurt his property value if my name was still on the deed. There were gasps in the courtroom. Olivia's mother, who had come to support her daughter, suddenly turned very pale. Even some of the jury members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Olivia's family had something to say too. I'll never forget her mother, Patricia. Yes, she had the same name as my lawyer, which only added to my confusion, standing up during a recess and approaching me with such venom in her eyes. You've destroyed our family, she hissed. You've turned your son into a criminal. No woman with a heart would do what you've done. My own hands balled into fists, but I kept my voice level. What did I do? I told the truth. If that destroys your family, then maybe your family needed to be destroyed. I walked away before she could respond. Patricia, my lawyer, caught up with me in the hallway and put her hand on my shoulder. You're doing good, she said quietly. I know this is hard. I know you love him. I do love him, I said, and I meant every single word. That's what makes this so difficult. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Love doesn't mean silence. Love means holding someone accountable when they do wrong. Love means, sometimes, letting them face the consequences of their own choices. This is real. This happens in families every single day. How many of you have had to hold someone accountable who you love? The guilt is real, but so is the truth. Tell me in the comments how you handled it. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus was found guilty of 2 counts of fraud and unauthorized use of a credit card. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months if he completed a rehabilitation program. He didn't look at me. He didn't cry. He just accepted his fate with a nod, like he'd already accepted that our relationship was over, that our love, or what was left of it, had become just another casualty in this story. I felt nothing when the gavel came down. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just a hollow, aching emptiness where my hopes for him used to live. The media got hold of the story somehow. Senior woman prosecutes son for theft, read one headline. Mother's betrayal destroys family, screamed another. People had opinions about what I'd done, about whether I was a hero or a villain, about whether I'd crossed a line that should never be crossed. But I knew something that nobody else seemed to understand. I wasn't the one who destroyed the family. Marcus had done that when he chose deception over honesty. Olivia had done that when she encouraged him to steal. Their families had done that when they chose to enable the behavior instead of facing the truth. I was just the person who stopped the bleeding. The night after the verdict, I sat in my kitchen and made a list. Everything I owned, everything I valued, everything I wanted to keep. I looked at that house with fresh eyes, and for the first time, I saw it for what it really was. A prison. A monument to my sacrifices. A place where I had slowly disappeared while keeping everyone else comfortable. So I did something that people said was cruel. People said it was the action of a heartless woman. But it was the most sane decision I'd made in decades. I put the house on the market. The house sold in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and everything I'd known for 20 years was gone. But I didn't feel sad about it. Part 5 is where I finally tell you what I did next, and how I found freedom. This is the part where the Real story begins. The house sold to a young family. A couple in their 30s with 2 small children who were thrilled to have a backyard and room to grow. I watched them move their boxes in, and instead of feeling sad, I felt a strange sense of relief. That house had stopped being my home the moment I realized I was living in it with people who didn't respect me. It had become a cage, beautiful on the outside but suffocating from within. I took the proceeds from the sale, enough to live modestly for the rest of my life if I was careful, which I planned to be, and I left. I didn't tell Marcus. He was in prison by then, letters coming occasionally asking me to forgive him, asking me to withdraw my statement, asking me to help him. I read them without responding. I couldn't forgive what I hadn't had the power to prevent. I couldn't undo what was done. I could only move forward. I chose a city I'd never been to before. Portland. Somewhere rainy and cool, where nobody knew my name or my history. Where I could start completely from scratch. The apartment I found is small. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a living room that's barely big enough for a sofa and a chair. But it's mine. Every single inch of it belongs to me, and there's no one else's needs competing for space. I sit by the window sometimes and watch the rain fall, and I think about all those years I spent making room for other people's dreams. Caroline came to visit last month. My daughter, the one who had warned me about Marcus, who had seen through the deception before I did. She walked through my apartment and tears started streaming down her face. "Are you okay?" she asked. And I realized something in that moment. I had spent so many years asking other people if they were okay, managing their emotions, trying to keep the peace. And now my own daughter was asking me. "Yes," I said. And I meant it. For the first time in a very long time, I'm actually okay. She hugged me then, held me the way I'd held her so many times before, and we both cried. But these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of healing, of finally acknowledging that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. I don't talk about Marcus anymore. He wrote to me from prison saying he wanted to reconcile, that he'd found God, that he was a changed man. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. But it doesn't matter to me anymore because I've finally realized something crucial. His healing, his redemption, his future, none of those things are my responsibility. They never were. What is my responsibility is my own life. My own happiness. My own peace. And I'm finally giving myself that gift. I volunteer at a community center now, working with other seniors who feel forgotten by their families. We sit together over coffee and share our stories. There's a woman named Dorothy who reminds me so much of myself. She spent 50 years raising a daughter who barely calls her anymore. There's Harold, 72 years old, whose son asked him to sign over his house and then kicked him out when he refused. There's Susan, who gave up her career to be a stay-at-home mother and now her children won't even visit. We've created something beautiful out of our pain. A community. A support system. A space where we know we're not alone, where we understand each other without needing explanations, where we validate each other's experiences and say the things that need to be said. You deserve better, we tell each other. You deserve respect. You deserve love. You deserve to take up space. And we mean it. Someday, if Marcus gets out of prison and wants to contact me, I'll have to make a decision about whether I want a relationship with him. But that day hasn't come yet, and I'm not going to spend my energy worrying about what might happen in a future that doesn't exist. I'm too busy living in the present moment, in this small apartment in Portland, with the rain falling softly outside my window and the knowledge that I survived something many people don't survive. I survived myself. I survived my own guilt. I survived my own fear. And I came out the other side whole. To everyone listening to me right now who feels trapped, who feels used, who feels like they're slowly disappearing while everyone else gets to exist fully and loudly, I want you to know something. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Your story matters. Your pain has meaning. Your choice to walk away from what's toxic isn't cruel, it's brave. Your decision to put yourself first isn't selfish, it's essential. Your willingness to take back your power isn't vindictive, it's necessary. There's a whole world out there waiting for you. A world where you don't have to shrink. A world where your needs matter just as much as everyone else's. A world where you get to be more than just what everyone else needs you to be. And I promise you, with every fiber of my being, with everything I've learned on this journey from victim to survivor to someone who is finally, truly living, that world is worth fighting for. That world is worth everything.